I have a brief video that I'd like to show you that has a little bit of all of us in it, all three of us. So I'm Corine Wegener, and I direct the Smithsonian's Cultural Rescue Initiative. And here's a little bit about what we're doing. Cultural heritage is our historic legacy and really crucial, I think, to how we see ourselves as people. And when you lose cultural heritage, once it's gone forever.
Cultural heritage is important for several reasons. It gives people an identity, a sense of a shared past.
Sometimes it's in a belief or a ritual, sometimes it's a kind of food, sometimes it's an object that's incredibly valuable in a museum.
Well, today, cultural heritage is at risk in several ways. One, in terms of natural disasters. We've seen earthquakes and hurricanes that destroy historical buildings, jeopardize collections. At the same time, we also see human conflicts, wars, where people are consciously destroying the cultural heritage and history of other people.
Right now, we have local communities who are losing their cultural heritage. What we're really seeing is the deliberate targeting of the people, the deliberate effort to exterminate them, the deliberate effort to remove them from history.
There was a void, nobody else was acting. The Smithsonian stepped up and said, hey, we gotta do something. This is cultural heritage being destroyed in front of our eyes.
Smithsonian started their work on cultural heritage disasters in Haiti after the 2010 earthquake. We had a large project on the ground there. Since then, we've become more involved in helping colleagues from conflict zones like Mali, Syria, and Iraq.
In war-torn countries, heritage professionals, museum curators, archaeologists often place their lives at risk to protect cultural heritage.
There's Catherine.
We owe it to them to assist in any way we can.
In Nepal, we provided training and equipment for our colleagues. After a disaster, of course, the humanitarian response absolutely has to come first. It's number one. But people often make the mistake of assuming that there's nothing that can be done for cultural heritage in that environment during the humanitarian assistance phase. And that's just not true. You really can't separate the cultural heritage from the people.
These are things that matter most. Cultural heritage often represents people's fundamental beliefs and values. And so in a time of disaster, when people are at their lowest and their greatest kind of need, if the Smithsonian has the ability to help save those objects, it gives hope to people. And it lets them imagine that they're going to survive, they're going to persevere, and they're going to create great things in the future.
So, thanks for your perseverance. So I think I ended up getting to go in the middle because I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. And so, as you might be able to tell from our presentations, Catherine and Brian and I have been working together in various iterations over the last 5 years or so. And it's been really a pleasure to work with them both. And so you'll see some more about our programs here. The Smithsonian Cultural Rescue Initiative, as the video said, started after the 2010 Haiti earthquake. Of course, the Smithsonian's been involved in safeguarding and caring for the collections of the American people since more than 150 years ago. But really this idea about emergency response for cultural heritage and trying to integrate that into the larger world of disaster risk management and humanitarian assistance is a fairly new endeavor. And after we worked on the ground in Haiti in 2010, and I'd like to point out my colleague Ed Rinn, who's here with us tonight, who was part of the Smithsonian's Haiti team and made sure we all had a safe place to go and work and safe places to live for the whole time during the duration of the 18-month project. And we got a lot of work there done, but it was a slow start. It took us weeks and weeks to get there, to work with our colleagues, to work out all the kinks, to raise money, to try to get our humanitarian assistance colleagues on board with the idea that while you're saving people, you can also help them save their heritage. I liken it to if a family has a fire, if you had a fire at your home, once your family is safe and your pets are safe, the next thing you want to do is see if you can go in there and get your family photos and your mom's wedding dress or your grandfather's military uniforms. It's a human way of thinking. We want to save those things that can't be replaced. And so communities and nations even aren't any different. But we realized we were very slow on the uptake for Haiti, and our first question was, we were successful here after a time, but how do we do this better and faster in the future? And that's how the Haiti Cultural Rescue Initiative was born. And so we've been working on a plan for how to institutionalize this kind of work and grow the network of heritage professionals and work with our partners from different universities and the type of emergency response organizations and even the US government interagency, how we can integrate all this. And so we came up with this initiative where we talk about recognition, raising awareness, resilience, which has to do with training and engagement of communities and better preparedness for disasters, response, and research. And I'm going to cover everything but the response kind of really cursorily and then tell you about a few responses, keeping in mind that the theme here tonight is saving cultural heritage in conflict. And so first of all, on raising awareness, there's Catherine and me, and Brian was also heavily involved in this, but I had this great picture of Catherine and me. We did an exhibition for members of Congress last year on, it seems like a long time ago, but it was just about a year ago, called The Death of History, to let members of Congress better understand the issues behind the intentional destruction of cultural heritage in Syria and Iraq. And we put together very quickly a small exhibition, and then we had some panel discussions and testimony to illustrate these issues that Catherine was kind of just bringing up to you. We also work here domestically in the United States, and we co-chair the Heritage Emergency National Task Force, a public-private partnership of organizations dealing with cultural heritage destruction. You may have heard a lot about the impact of Hurricane Matthew on the East Coast. Things like the Louisiana flooding over the summer did impact some cultural heritage and a lot of people's individual cultural heritage. And so working together as part of this task force, we try to raise awareness amongst communities about the measures they can take to save their personal family treasures, and we get that information out there rapidly in the face of hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, all the types of disasters we face here at home in the United States. Here you see my colleague from the Postal Museum at the Smithsonian, Becca Kennedy. She and another colleague of mine, Stacy Bowe, are right now deployed in South Carolina doing a workshop like the one you see here, which they did a few months ago in Louisiana, to educate people at the FEMA disaster recovery centers about how to do this kind of work and how they can save their family treasures. And we see this as a real ethical responsibility for the Smithsonian and for the task force. We also run a lot of training. We have an annual program with an organization called ICROM, which is located in Rome, Italy, the International Conservation Center. And we work with them on an annual course called First Aid for Cultural Heritage in Crisis. A lot of the participants in this international course are coming from countries where they are facing disasters. And you'll see that the young woman that Catherine just spoke about, Layla, is one of the participants here. I know they're too small to see, but this was an exercise that we held for this class. Most recently this summer, the course was held at the Smithsonian, and we had 21 participants from 17 countries in this course. You'll also see here members of the 9/11 task force from Fort Belvoir who deal with disaster response for the military, as well as first responders from the DC Fire and Rescue. So we really put them to the test on how they could rescue cultural heritage. And this was the culmination of a 4-week course. We also provide this kind of training and awareness for US military units, and in particular Army Civil Affairs and Marine Corps Civil Affairs units, on their responsibilities to protect and to plan for encountering cultural heritage during military operations. On the research part of our sort of whole strategic plan for the Cultural Rescue Initiative, you heard a little bit about it from Catherine. We had have an ongoing National Science Foundation project where we look at geospatially cultural heritage that's been damaged by conflict. Our first pilot program focused on Syria and Iraq, and we're expanding that project. And we look at it from an interdisciplinary point of view of social sciences, political science, art history, archaeology. We're integrating all of this together to really try to get at what, creating a data set that we can look at to figure out what some of the early warning indicators may be for the destruction of cultural heritage and how that impacts the civilians in that community. So it's, that's just kind of putting a really big project into a nutshell, but that's one of the many research projects that we're working on. So getting to the response part of it, in 13, we started the Safeguarding the Cultural Heritage of Syria and Iraq project. At the time, faced with the civil war in Syria. And you can see here, I know it's too tiny to see because there are so many partners who've been engaged with this project, but our big primary partner is the University of Pennsylvania, the Penn Cultural Heritage Center and Museum, and which Brian is part of, and Catherine has been a part of this project since day one. And so what we have done, several projects, but working with Syrian colleagues who are working in opposition-controlled parts of Syria, and making sure that we're engaged with the people who are responsible for caretaking for that cultural heritage on a regular basis. So that's the key, is engaging and enabling those community members. And here you see our colleague Salama Kuntar helping with the training course that we held in Turkey, where our Syrian colleagues were able to come across the border, receive training and equipment and supplies, and then go back across and save cultural heritage sites like the Mara Mosaics Museum in Idlib province. Here they're doing a stabilization of these fabulous mosaics which were not able to be moved so that they could be safer from both looters and from aerial bombing. And you see here, very basic stuff, you know, figuring out how to cover up the mosaics and then lay sandbags in front of them. And we were very lucky because not long after they completed the project, the museum was barrel bombed and has been another couple of times since then. But we're lucky that the work that these guys did paid off, because the mosaics are still intact behind these sandbag walls, and they've been able, through the support of the Smithsonian and Penn and through our wonderful donors, have been able to maintain this even now. Thanks. We've had a few other projects, working at archaeological site consolidation, working with refugee groups within Syria who are living in historic site areas and helping them to better understand the site they live and to cope with their status as refugee or internally displaced persons inside the country, and to talk about some of the heritage that needs to be preserved for the future generations of Syrians. Catherine already talked a little bit about the training that we do in Iraq, and I just wanted to show some of what it looks like to fake a disaster indoors. And here, one of our colleagues who comes and teaches from Egypt is helping us to train the next generation of Iraqis to cope with this kind of situation. And we also feel that because we have experience working with the Blue Shield and other organizations to do military training, to teach about this responsibility under the treaty, the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in Armed Conflict, which the US is a states party. As we're training Iraqi forces and Iraqi Army and Kurdish Peshmerga, it's also a responsibility to train them on that part of their humanitarian legal responsibilities. And so the Safeguarding the Heritage of Syria and Iraq project created this guide to Mosul heritage a few months ago. Catherine worked on it, Brian worked on it, and several other partners. And together we were able to create this small pocket guide. And for those of you who are interested, I have some with me tonight. And we shared it with our U.S. military colleagues in Erbil, who distributed copies out to the Iraqi forces who are on their way to Mosul. And so we hope that in some small measure that's helped to provide some protective training for those folks. Thankful for all the donors who have participated in this in the past 5 years of the project, nearly 5 years. And thank you very much for your attention tonight.